Good evening, everyone. I'm gonna get started. I want to thank you for joining me tonight for the little time that we have with each other for this forum. It will be one of many conversations that we're going to host in this manner as we take the opportunity to um, really, majority of this is to hear from community members with respects to questions, comments, concerns that they may have with regards to the opening of school. Excuse me. So what we want to do is I'm going to try to keep my presentation short so that it gives enough time for people to go into the Q&A section. And as you're thinking about that, I do want to make sure that you know how to go there. So if you go into the Q&A, we ask that you put your name, part of the township that you reside in, and then your question. My administrative assistant, Mrs. Mance, will do the honors tonight with regards to reading those questions, comments, or recommendations that you may have. In the event that we do not have the space tonight to answer those, I will answer those questions and I will post them on our website if we cannot get to them tonight. I also want to make sure that we stay focused with the intent of this meeting, and that is really to give you, as of today, what we know with regards to CDC, Pennsylvania Department of Education, and Governor Wolf's reopening guidelines, and try to stay focused on that, though there may be lots of other questions, and there'll be time for other conversations, but I want to focus on the purpose of tonight's conversation. So as I said earlier, this is really an introduction to a number of meetings we're going to have regarding what's next for Cheltenham, but at the same time, everyone's having that conversation, what's next for the Commonwealth, and I'm sure for the country as we continue to navigate through COVID-19. Something I wanted to try, and you may not have enough information, but I thought it'd be interesting and fun to do this. After my presentation, I'm gonna put a poll up, and you may not have enough background in order to say, yes, I'm thinking about this. But in my May 22nd letter, I had shared with the community that there are a number of models in terms of how school districts are thinking about opening up for the fall. And I teased out 4 or 5 that seem to be nationally everyone's trying to think about. Our district has not identified a particular model. We will use the remainder of this month in July in committee meetings to have those conversations and to bring community members in to give their input. What these committee members will do, and we're gonna try to break it into four committees. And part of that is to develop and present a schedule or recommendations for a schedule that adheres to the recommendations and guidelines of all of the health agencies and PDE. It is to brainstorm what are the barriers, questions, and challenges that the district needs to consider and explore prior to moving in a particular direction. And then the committee is going to be broken into four groups. One, we're going to really focus on the committee that will tackle a number of challenges, but specific to curriculum instruction. So when we come back, in the format in which we come back and we decide what that is, what will instruction look like? What will pedagogy look like? What will supports look like? And what are the different models that it would represent or look like if we decided that we're going to move in this particular model for opening school? Then we're going to have a committee that looks at health and wellness. And that is, how do we make sure that we support the social, emotional, physical, and obviously the medical um, uh, needs and safety of our students and our staff. So it's primarily on health and wellness, and that's from a social, emotional, physical, and of course, medical, as well as there are many guidelines on what districts need to implement to ensure that we mitigate the spread of COVID-19. Then we'll have a committee that will take a look at operations. Under the format, whatever the district finally comes to a decision on, and that will obviously be made up of central office administrators, building administrators. We're going to have parents on that committee, teachers. We're going to have our BEC members, our paraprofessionals on that committee as well, students on that committee, to kind of vet through all of these challenges and to come up with a comprehensive plan. So under operations, that committee is really going to focus on, from a facilities perspective, what do we need to be prepared for? How would transportation work? Because there's a number of scenarios, depending on which one we choose. Transportation is a significant challenge. Matter of fact, I dare to say that unless we turn the corner and everything is absolutely roses in the next month or so, when we come back and there's a vaccine, then I think that's the only way where we won't have transportation challenges. But no matter which model we eventually pick, transportation is going to be a significant challenge. Obviously also space in our facilities, but we'll get to that in a little bit. And then in operations, we're also going to have a group talking about information technology. What does that look like? What else do we need? Are there additional platforms to support student learning? And then we're going to talk about meals, and that's specific because there are guidelines within the CDC and PDE document that provides recommendations on how and where students should be eating during the school day, if it is a full return, a hybrid return, or any type of return that comes into the building. And then we are going to take a look at extracurricular activities. And what does that mean for our sports and our co-curricular programs? How do we facilitate following CDC and PDE guidelines an effective program for our students? And that will probably come a lot sooner than later, and you'll understand that with respects to some recent guidelines that came out the other day from Pennsylvania, from the governor with regards to sports. So I, throughout some of my communication, I've tried to embed, and I know sometimes it's a lot to process, but I really wanted to provide families an opportunity to have the resources themselves so that they can, when they're able to or they want to, have access to what we are reading or what PDE or what the governor or the CDC is putting out with regards to recommendations. So I included in this slide, not all of the resources you can find on the CDC website and PDE Gov website with respects to plans for opening up, but these are preliminarily some of the big resources that the district has been referring to, and some of the links that we've embedded in some of the communication that I've been sending to the community since we closed. So let me briefly go through new information that we just received, and that is sports. So because Pennsylvania has moved from red to yellow, and eventually the governor at some point will announce a move to the green phase, that there has been guidance that is provided with regards to resuming sporting activities under the PIAA, and ensuring that school districts who wish to move forward with those have to develop a plan to ensure that students are safe, and others as well. And this may probably look a little bit different from some schools to another, but at the end of the day, every school is supposed to, in every district, is supposed to require some level of safety per PDE's guidelines. So we're gonna spend some time very soon, matter of fact, in terms of getting individuals together to try to put together what this would look like. This plan has to be approved by the Board of School Directors. It does have to be publicly accessible on our website, but this is not a plan, at least for the pre-K to 12 school sports under PIAA, does not have to be submitted to the Department of Health and or PDE for approval. They just want to make sure that you have it, your board has reviewed it, your board has voted to adopt that particular plan, and then the public has access to that plan. So if you go and take a look at the plan talks about yellow and green phase. In the yellow phase, what the plan states is that you can begin resuming sport activities. However, that there is a limit on the number of individuals that can come together. And there's also a limit with respects to individuals who are using the facility as well. So it also speaks to the fact that under the yellow phase, which we currently in, that activities are going to be limited to only student athletes, coaches, officials, and staff. So there's going to have to be clear messaging for those families who may be dropping students off, who may want to stick around and watch or somehow participate. That will not be allowed. And in addition, there are some future guidelines that will be coming forth, but on the website, it really does articulate some of the things that districts need to do to ensure the safety of its student athletes and its faculty as they will begin to resume sporting activities. Now in the green, there's not a significant amount of change. They've increased the number of individuals that can be in a facility when we do go to green, but it still ensures that practices and activities are to be limited to student athletes, coaches, and officials and staff, and that additional guidelines will be forthcoming, as this is, as we have learned, extremely fluid process. So we are going to bring together a group to help us think through, as I know individuals are eager to think about, especially out of season sports, because I think our sporting schedule traditionally starts in early August, but I know there are practices before that. I know this morning, my conversation with superintendents across Montgomery County, it seems like everyone is reading this as it's coming out hot off the presses, and you can see how strong band parents are across Montgomery County, because I think every superintendent mentioned the band community wanting to know when they can start and what that looks like. But I want to be very clear that we will follow the guidelines. We will get things in place. I don't want to rush, but I also don't want to delay. I know our students have been waiting for a long time and our families to re-engage, but safety is utmost priority. So we're going to make sure that we put together most likely probably a phase one of how do we get some of our athletes back. And I say phase one, and you'll understand a little bit what I mean later on in the conversation, because last week, PDE released its preliminary guidance to school districts with respects to reopening schools, and they are going to be releasing additional reports over the next 3 to 4 weeks on other areas. But as of right now, what they want districts to focus on, that prior to school opening, for whatever that is for districts, but obviously ours is before Labor Day, the end of August, prior to us returning to school, whatever format the district has approved, we need to submit a health and safety plan to the Department of Education. That plan, in addition to the PIAA plan that I just made a reference to, will also have to be board approved before students and staff are allowed to come in. That plan also needs to be readily available to our community to review. That also will be part of our committee efforts in terms of looking at that process. The state has provided a template, very comprehensive template, so it does walk you through a series of columns with respects to, here's the questions you have to ask, who are those responsible, what steps are you going to put into place, and how are you going to make sure you're monitoring that. So that's why it's important for us that for those that are identified as part of this committee, that this is not just about, hey, come and help us, give us ideas, and we'll take that too. But for those who are sitting on the committee, your task is really not just to help put a plan together with regards to PIAA sports. It's not just about putting together a plan for how we're reopening school. It is about, throughout the school year, the committee meeting periodically, and we have to determine what that schedule is, to review the progress that the district is making under those 4 categories. So if someone joins the curriculum instruction committee, and they're part of that, and they represent a diverse group of stakeholders, we don't want you jumping off of that committee because we have a plan. What we need to do is we need to have, continue to have sessions, however we have them, whether it's this platform, and hopefully it's in person, where 2 months after or 3 weeks after the plan, whatever the timeline is, we're revisiting that, seeking input from those committee members, gathering input from community to say, how are things going? Are we true to form with respects to what we committed to? And what are changes or pivots that we need to take? So it is important that those committee members understand, besides the larger community that will be giving us input, that if you sit on this committee, that we're asking you to sit on this committee until we are in a very, very safe place with COVID-19. And I would dare to say that we probably would need that all the way until we have a vaccine, and hope that that is forthcoming. So the plan really speaks to, and I'm not going to read all the bullets, but, and I'll make this obviously presentation available, it's being recorded. And I think it is part of some of the same bullets that I had shared with the committee on May 22nd with what school districts are going to be tasked to do. So the reality is this plan needs to identify mechanisms how we are going to protect children and staff who may be at a higher risk of illness. So if we're coming back to a brick and mortar and full capacity, half capacity, a flip schedule, whatever that may look like, that plan has to say, how are you going to support children and staff members who may be at a high risk factor? We also have to put measures into place with respects to what happens when we open if there is a staff member, a child who does become sick and or is COVID positive, what are the steps that the district is going to do to appropriately communicate those steps, support that student or that staff member, provide that medical attention that they will need, and what type of disinfecting cleaning is going to take place in that particular area, in that classroom, and how long will schools be asked to be closed as we do this process. And then we are going to have to talk about the extent in which, how are we going to use face coverings for our staff. There are guidelines and recommendations with respects to adults wearing masks or face shields. There's conversations specifically with face shields with staff members who, more than other staff members, working in very, very close proximity with students, and that would require them to engage in contacting with children in a way where 6 feet is not possible. So we have to explore who those staff members are and the type of face shields they'll get, and how we will implement face shields for our staff members. There's also guidelines with regards to face coverings for students. And as this continues to ebb and flow, the latest is that they are recommending that older students, if indeed they are coming back to the district in whatever capacity, that they will be asked to wear face masks, which is a challenge itself, not only for adults, but for children. What we are hearing is that there is not a recommendation for younger children, as they are at the opposite end of the risk factor. There's also conversation with regards to the way classrooms are supposed to be set up. So we are going to have to look at our classrooms very differently. We are going to have to space students apart and minimize social contact, which is very difficult if you can imagine this in an elementary school setting or in any setting. The work of public education is a social endeavor. And to try to keep kids 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet apart while they're in the classrooms will be challenging. It creates staffing issues, it creates busing issues, it creates facilities issues if that is the case. So we're going to have to work through what that looks like. We've been doing some preliminary analysis with, if we did social distance in a typical elementary classroom, how many seats could we have? And we can vet that through those who are really interested in that part of the reentry plan and want to focus on operations for the district. So that's going to be, and that's going to be a challenge. We also have to think about that the traditional classroom is going to look different, which means that we're going to have to clear out, and I use the term declutter respectfully, only to say that all the resources and all of the furniture and other things that we tend to have, we have to do analysis with respects to, is that really needed inside the classroom? So we can try to get as much space as possible and put additional students inside the classroom. So our staff is going to be involved in reviewing that as well. There's a significant amount of training that is going to be asked that we do for our staff and our students, so that they are aware of COVID-19 preventative measures and what to do in particular situations. We're going to have to send a significant amount of communication to our parents and guardians in terms of what to look out for, what the signs are for keeping your child at home when they are not feeling well, sharing with our staff their protocols for, if you're not feeling well, don't come to school. It's safer for you and everyone else. And of course, protocols for sporting activities, which I spoke to a little bit earlier. in the conversation. And all of that is really in the yellow phase, which we currently are in right now. One of the other challenges we'll have, and I know community members who are eager to use our buildings, who customarily have used our buildings, we're going to have to provide and either have significant limitations or no access to our buildings for those who are non-essential. So we're going to have to be very clear that if you are not directly connected to the district and providing supports in that mechanism, that we have to ensure the safety of our staff and our students and heavily regulate individuals coming into the building. There's also conversations with regards to however we come back, we have to limit passing time because ringing a bell and allowing X number of students, whatever that number is, to transition from class to class is not a recommended practice, which will have to significantly change the way in which we operate. And unfortunately, it goes without saying, all of these measures will significantly change the way in which we operate. In addition, I said earlier, busing. We are looking at how could we possibly, without purchasing 60 additional buses, and even if the district had the money, which we do not, we're not in a position to purchase 60 buses. And that's demonstrated based on the last couple of years as we've been sharing our structural deficit and trying to mitigate that with some cost saving measures so that doesn't continue to accrue over time, and that number continues to get larger. So we are going to have to figure out ways to practice social distancing on our bus, and that is every other seat, if we can get away with doing that. But even with that, that would require a normal passenger bus, 72, only carrying 24 children. And since we are transporting over 3,800 students throughout the district, you can begin to imagine the scale of what the transportation would have to look like. And the most difficult challenge, even if the district had the money, which we do not, I'll say again, that getting 30 to 40, 50 additional bus drivers is not going to happen. There's already a bus driver shortage in the state of Pennsylvania prior to COVID-19. I don't see that being relaxed anytime soon or changing. So that's going to be a challenge for us. And all of this is, like I said earlier, is the yellow phase, which is what we're currently in right now. In the green phase, not much has changed. What they continue to express in the green phase, and Governor Wolf will, I'm assuming, announce when we will go from yellow to green. They continue to recommend that social distancing continue to play a role in that. Wearing masks continues to be part of that process as well, making sure that you continue to have guidelines for individuals who have high exposure or high risk, making sure that you're screening individuals coming into the building, and that could be temperature checks as well. And what do you do if someone has a temperature above the regulated number, and how do we navigate that as well? So the green phase is still, and it continues to be part of the continued challenges of keeping everyone safe throughout this process. So that is really where PDE, Governor Wolf, and Department of Health and Pennsylvania Department of Health has provided guidance. There's unfortunately little financial support coming our way in order to do that. In the latest report, on average, if the districts were to implement all of the recommended guidelines. They're not mandatory, they're recommended, and the used language strongly recommended. But the average cost for districts is a little over $1.8 million to think about how do you create an environment where you can mitigate the spread of COVID-19. So I also wanted to share with you briefly in my May 22nd letter to the community, I had shared a couple of scenarios that we have not committed to at all. It is scenarios that we are learning from our neighbors from across the way in other states who are thinking about, as well as we are, how to open school. And I shared that only to give the community and our staff a sense of, here's the national conversation. There are many more models that are being discussed, but it seems like the ones that rose to the top in all of the literature is this idea about a one-day rotation where students report one full day of week to school to support their learning for 4 days, and then when they're not. And then there's this 2-day rotation where students report to school 2 full days a week. Then they might have online experiences. Then there's this A/B, half the students report to school, the other half are distance learning. There's opportunity where you can flip that, an AM and a PM schedule, where it's physical presence, then online. Then there is this conversation about, well, if really the biggest push, even though the number of COVID cases are going up across the country, is to reignite and restart our economy. Who is the group of students who are most vulnerable with regards to childcare? And there's conversation with, could you provide a brick and mortar experience for K through 6 students who normally obviously can't be left at home? And we divide those students throughout our buildings, practicing social distancing, and use all of our buildings, including Cedarbrook and the high school, to space students out. And of course, looking at good reason why we continue to keep the mods. They've been a saving grace, even though I know sometimes they're a headache, but that's an additional area in which we can explore in terms of spacing. So you have a K through 6, brick and mortar, and then elementary, and then secondary 7 through 12, because of the age group and the likelihood that they could, more so than K through 6, remain home without the same level of supervision, that they would do a online experience and then try to figure ways to create social connections through that process. Or we could take a really difficult turn, and instead of we're in green thinking we're coming back to school, we have to have a full online experience. So the reality and the challenge we have as a district is that regardless of which model we choose, we have to be prepared that in the event that something goes wrong and we have to close school, we have to be able to immediately launch a synchronous learning experience for our students for as long as they remain out of the district until they can come back after appropriate protocols have been placed. We had this conversation this morning, and I'll express my opinion. I don't think that once we go into green, we are going to go back and go back to a yellow or to a red. I just see what I am reading and what I'm seeing across the country is this hyper acceleration of wanting to return back to normal as quickly as possible to restart the economy. So either way, this districts in the Commonwealth and across the country are going to have to be prepared to pivot really quickly with regards to what happens if something does go wrong and we do have to go to an online format, and we're working on that. So I want to leave the next hour for Q&A that we have, hour and 30 minutes that we have today to talk about. I was reminded that the meat and potatoes of my presentation should be the opportunity for individuals to write questions, comments, recommendations, concerns that they want me to answer or reflect on as we move into this next phase. But before we do that, I'd ask Mr. Barone, our IT director, to launch a really quick poll. And we'll be sending out a survey in the near future, because part of the plan is to seek input and see where parents and guardians are at with regards to their comfort level. And I know you may not have a lot of information about that, and we'll tease that out later. But for those who are on the call with me today, and I see 254, I'd love if you can take really 3 minutes to take a look at some of those fall opening options. And if you're willing to participate, if you had to return, under which format would you prefer to return in, right? And if it's not there and you're thinking, you know what, there's a fifth one there, Marseille, you didn't add it, you can put it in the Q&A, and absolutely will reflect on that as well. But I thought before we got into a Q&A, we do a short little fun survey to see those who are on the call to poll to say, you know, knowing what you know, the short verbiage that is there, what would that look like for you, and which one would you think about with regards to returning your child to the district? So I'm gonna give you a couple minutes to do that, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the conversation for a Q&A. And I said before that my administrative assistant, Mrs. Mance, will go through the Q&A, ensuring that you tell us your full name and the part of the township in which you reside, and we will attempt to, or I will attempt to answer those as best as I can. So take a few minutes to do that. This is also a good opportunity to get your Q&A questions in as well. So another minute or so, and then we'll go back, and Ms. Mance will help me go through the Q&A. And we'll also make sure that we do our best to capture those. I said we'll capture those Q&As, and then we'll provide the ability for those who were unable to join us in the capacity to put in Q&As or to hear that. So with that, I'd like to move into the Q&A, and Mrs. Mance, I hope you're with me, and you can begin to kind of read those Q&A, and we will attempt to, or I will attempt to address those.
Okay, thank you, sir. Will do. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Our first one is from Chris Sturman. He's a resident of Winco with 2 children at CHS.
Mm-hmm.
Although Keystone exams were canceled this spring, PDE did not remove the graduation requirement. What plan does Cheltenham have to provide remediation prior to the fall Keystone window?
We do have, thank you for that question. Students will have, and families will have the ability to use our synchronous platforms, iExcel, in order to continue to support their mastery of particular areas. So we will be providing the opportunity for families to continue to use all the resources that the district currently has in offering an online experience.
Okay. Next one is from Stephen McCarter. Since it will be difficult to know what exactly the situation will be on the first day of schools opening in September, is the district planning for different scenarios, such as a full opening to operating remotely, as it has this past spring? And then next, there's 3 questions here. What will happen if the district reopens and positive cases are found in schools? And what plans for COVID-19 testing are contemplated?
Thank you for those questions. I'll try to answer the first one, and if you can repeat the second one, Mrs. Mance. We are going to have to put together multiple scenarios in the event that the district has to pivot. So because of the fluidity of this pandemic, that if we had to close our doors momentarily after we arrive, we'd have to be able to launch an online experience immediately, and not take 2 to 3 weeks to develop that particular platform. And I think we're in a better position now than we were when March 9th came, where I closed the district to clean, and then several days later, the governor, in abundance of caution, and obviously with the spread of COVID-19, closed all schools. So we are going to have to look at and plan for multiple scenarios, but we also have to consider that there are going to be parents who are going to be very concerned, rightfully so, about the safety of their child, and adults who are going to be concerned about, though you follow these protocols, I still don't feel safe. I don't want to return to the building. I don't want my child to return to the building. We have to create mechanisms of how do we provide an educational platform and a teaching platform for those cases. With respects to what do we do with a positive test of COVID, the CDC guidelines articulate the extent in which what steps that we have to follow. One of the, which is why we, unfortunately, our nursing staff will be extremely taxed, along with all of our staff members. But the idea about bringing awareness to all of our staff members with respects to what are COVID symptoms and when to make that call with respects to informing one of our nurses or one of our administrators, we come back, of a child once they go to the nurse's office. We have to put, per CDC guidelines, we have to have a space where we quarantine those individuals from the rest of the student or public population or staff population. We then have to put a protocol into place in all school districts with how we will go about ensuring that student returns home safely, and what does that look like? And there are going to be challenges because as we work, and everyone knows here that not every single parent can drop the phone and get to their child immediately. And what would that look like with respects to that? And until we get really the ability for rapid testing, which is the key to this, if we can identify individuals much quicker and turn around the results, we strongly reduce the possibility of increasing wide infection.
Thank you. Second question was, you asked me to repeat, you still need to repeat the second, sir?
Yeah, I don't know if I answered it, but if
Okay.
you can repeat the second.
What will happen if the district reopens and positive cases are found in schools?
Yes, I answered that.
Yes, you did.
Yes.
And what plans for COVID-19 testing are contemplated? And I
Um,
believe you touched on that as well.
yes, I'm relying on the state to give me guidelines with regards to the requirement of testing of individuals. There's a screener where we'll ask individuals, have they traveled? Have they been in? Do they have a member? And those are a lot of privacy issues we have to navigate, but we will follow the guidelines that are provided to us by the Pennsylvania Department of Health and CDC.
Okay. Next question is from Amy Cooker, or Cooker, I'm sorry. We have a rising ninth grader in the modules. Where we are looking at elementary kids being in the school buildings and older kids studying virtually. How will ninth graders learn how to adapt to high school expectations, which will be more rigorous? Can there be evening classes for older kids or evening office hours?
Well, I don't want to say that there's nothing off the table when we are brainstorming. It is about vetting it through in terms of what obstacles we have. There are contractual language in terms of how do we provide in terms of the total number of hours that teachers and staff work, and what could that look like if we did shift some of those. So I'm not prepared to take that off the table and not prepared to think about that and explore, is that an option for the district? And if it is, we'll continue to explore it.
Okay. Next question is from Jim Hilliard. Question is, what is the age or grade cutoff of older children versus younger children?
Yeah, thank you for that question. The way I am looking at the guidelines, and I want to tell you that it's indicative that 12 people can read the same thing, but they have different interpretations of what that means. And this morning in our superintendent's conversations, there continues to be that, and that happens in all walks of life. But it is my understanding that the CDC is indicating that they strongly recommend that high school age students wear face masks, and younger students below that will not have to. But at the end of the day, I said that could change. And as if you recall, this evolution of face masks has gone back and forth, where when originally individuals say you don't need to wear face masks, it's only for health providers. For those who are walking around with them, you're really taking away from the health industry. And then as the CDC and others learn more about this virus, they quickly shifted to, yes, it is important that individuals wear masks to protect the other person.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Dawn Zepik, and she's from Glenside. She has 3 children in the district. What is the age they are we recommending for children to wear face masks during school? And you just kind of touched on that a little bit, sir.
Yeah, it is going to be extremely difficult to have kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. And yes, we can, even though they indicated older children, high school, even 7th, 8th grade, to keep a mask on. So that's not the way in which I read the guidelines. However, I do want to share with you that there are a number of districts who are thinking about if a child gets on a bus, regardless of the age, they are to wear a face mask. Mm-hmm. And for the younger children, they can remove that face mask when they get into the building or onto school property. So all those are things where it's difficult as individuals are thinking differently about this process and the recommended guidelines. But it's very difficult for me to think about how a 6-year-old could keep a mask on for any length of time with regards to respiration and with regards to communicating, especially at those younger ages where you're learning phonics and the ability to see children's facial expressions and lips as they are pronunciating is difficult. The same way it will be extremely difficult for our staff to conduct those lessons while they have a face mask on as well.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Chris from WinCode. Is there a discussion regarding before and after care for parents that must report back to work?
Yes, we will have that conversation. Most likely that will take place in the curriculum and instruction in terms of before and after care. Whatever we do, we have to follow the CDC, PDE guidelines. So whatever happens in terms of social distancing, in terms of wearing masks, in terms of not sharing items together, in terms of how many kids can play together at a time, all of those will have to be developed before we move forward with resuming that, and the board will have to approve that plan.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Dawn Zepik again. Will there be an option to homeschool our children if we do not feel comfortable with the guidelines if we go back to yellow in the winter?
That is an option. To the previous, yes, it is an option. To the previous person, I think it was McCarter, is that we are going to have to create options just like that. Like I said earlier, there's a national poll going across right now, asking staff and asking families their level of comfort of bringing children back. A small number of my colleagues have pushed out that survey recently to their community, gauging parents' level of comfort. And that changes because you can be comfortable today, June 11th, and then come August 1st, things change, and the way you answer that, you're not comfortable anymore. So we are going to have to consider that there's a large number of parents nationally who understand where we are as a country, understand the guidelines that have to be put in place, but still feel uncomfortable with bringing their child to school. And there are professional staff who continue to feel uncomfortable, even with all the parameters put into place. So we have a daunting task of how do we navigate through that, and absences will play a significant factor, right? Because at the end of the day, if you don't have enough adults teaching children, you can't continue schooling. The flip side might not be as challenging, right? So you could be a classroom teacher and only 3 of your kids show up today, and you can provide some instruction, but when your adult doesn't show up, that is a significant problem as well. So that is an option, and we'll continue to look at other options as we are going to have contingency plans.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Chris from WinCode. Any COVID aid coming from the federal government to support these CDC rules?
Very little, very, very little. There was a recent article that came out, and I think our board vice president, Mr. Joel Fishbein, shared that with us, and he says, I've been talking about this since day one. And really the summary of the conversation is the fact that they have yet to be a bailout for public schools to reopen. So even though there's a lot of stimulus packages to restart the economy. Yes, there's provisions for CARE Act. We're getting what I believe to be nominal dollars, and the number escapes me. And I know we had a facilities and finance presentation on Tuesday, and I want to say 350, 400,000 for COVID-related expenses. but I had shared with you prior that the national average, in order for schools to implement COVID measures, is in excess of 1.6 to 1.8 million dollars. So there absolutely is not enough federal dollars with the tall ask that is being placed on the shoulders of school systems.
Thank you, sir. Next one is from Catherine Giacoletti. She's from Wincote. There is a lot of emphasis on restarting sports in all of the guidelines related to schools. Participating in sports has to have a higher risk of exposure than academics. It seems very likely that kids or coaches or teachers involved in sports will be exposed and get sick, which then puts everyone at risk, leading to the needs to shut down or take other actions. Is there any consideration being given to prioritizing restarting academics only first, then looking at sports later?
Well, like I said, we could. The state of Pennsylvania has identified measures into place that if school systems implement, they are to begin their sporting activity. In the CDC youth sports guidelines, I had it in front of me, but it's on the resource slide that in my PowerPoint, it does spell out specifically that there are, and they rank sports in terms of low risk, medium, high risk, very high sports. So if you think about sports where there is a significant amount of opportunity for contact, they are saying that those individuals are at higher risk of transmitting COVID-19. They also indicate that there needs to be specific guidelines on how those athletes are practicing, how coaches are going to be educated on maintaining social distancing, the fact that you're going to have to limit the sharing of any equipment. So if individuals, because of the high probability that exists with contacting or contracting COVID via surfaces. So if there was a contact with a ball and student then passes that ball to someone else, there's recommendations that that piece of equipment has to be consistently cleaned. How that happens is the way in which districts have to put that together. So there is language with, if you are moving in this direction, this is the way in which you're doing it. And you're seeing that in organized sports, professional sports, but obviously they have millions and millions and millions of dollars to implement whatever it is that they need to. K through 12 institutions are not that lucky. But there has not been a conversation with, let's not worry about sports, let's get academics first. It was, how do we move forward with putting together a academic plan, which is necessary, but at the same time, thinking about a safety plan. And really the safety plan we put together will mirror what student athletes will do outside, like a locker room. We know locker rooms are going to look very different, whether we have sports or not. When kids are in gym class and they are changing, and what does that look like? And how do we regulate small number of children or student athletes going, or students going into those locker rooms? Which means you're thinking about, well, what would a typical gym class look like if you're only allowing X number of kids to go in, change, waiting for that group to come out, and then another group to go in? If you can imagine the day, it would be exhaustive at best. But we're looking at both opportunities, but understand the question about prioritization.
Next, thank you, sir. Next question is from Christine Cooper. Is the impact of varied schedules on working parents being considered?
Yes, and I think that's the challenge and the frustrating part about, at least where I feel frustrated, and I don't like to be highly critical of people in leadership positions because I feel for them, but because I know my position, and I know they're trying to do their best. But if it's going to be extremely difficult to put together a schedule that following CDC guidelines does not negatively impact a large number of our family members. And I shared with my team that as an immigrant to this country, if this were to happen when I was in elementary school, and knowing the work that my parents did, that it would end the language barrier, literally impossible for them to remain at home and provide an educational experience or walk me through an educational experience. So if we go to example where we have a schedule that says it's a rotating schedule, on these 3 days, these kids come to school, the others stay at home, and then they rotate. Well, what does that mean for working families who don't have the ability or the resources for childcare? So when we get into these committees and as individuals give us feedback, we are going to try very hard to look at what the impact of that is. But I want to share publicly that any scenario, without it being a full coming back, everything's okay, is going to negatively impact a certain part of our population, more some than others.
Thank you. Next question is from Clay Zimmer. How frequently will classrooms be cleaned and disinfected? Will the district provide hand sanitizer for each classroom?
We are looking at how to distribute hand sanitizers, where that would be within or outside of the classroom. That would be the final decision would be part of that committee reviewing that. I mean, there's even guidelines with regards to water fountains. The districts have to rethink differently about the way in which students are using water fountains when we return. There's also conversation about, though we are going to significantly limit any non-essential individuals coming into our buildings, there's going to be times where people have to come into our buildings. Where will those hand sanitizers be? So we are going to have to significantly increase access to hand sanitizers. And recently at our facilities meeting, and Mr. Teasdale, who meets periodically with other facilities managers across Montgomery County, who are all meeting to struggle with these issues together and to learn from each other. Recently, we were told that hand dryers are no longer allowed to be used in schools, with the fear that those particulates, if they are in the restroom using those hand dryers, could spread those even more. So we're putting a process in place for that. So we are going to look at our supplies and our disinfectants and having that accessible. With regards to the rotation of the classroom clean, we're gonna have to significantly do that, which means that if we are rotating classes, the recommendation is before another group of students come in, we are going to have to wipe all of the high touch surfaces off before another groups come in. And there is a possibility, let's say if you're in the classroom all day, the reality is we have to put a schedule together where our staff supports us in cleaning that as frequently as possible.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Christine Cooper. The problem that SDP is having is that older students are highly disengaged with virtual instruction.
Well, part of the conversation that we're hoping to have, and we welcome the input, is those who sit on the curriculum instruction and pedagogy team. And we've heard this in terms of level of engagement. There are strategies that we can improve on. There are new strategies that we can help our staff members facilitate so that we can increase engagement amongst all of our students. But yes, there are from practice and research that high levels of disengagement is a problem, and we have to find, improve what we're doing and add new strategies to engage students.
Thank you, sir. Chris from Wincote asks, if you split the children of K6 across the 7 CSD buildings, would you keep siblings in the same buildings?
We would consider that, because that, if you're with siblings, some of the recommendation is to be closer to siblings, but that would also be a conversation where what does that logistics look like for scheduling, for bus transportation? So what I share with individuals, with every new idea, though we welcome it, there has to be a vetting of what are the challenges and implications of implementing that. So we are not opposed to looking at scenarios, but each scenario we look at, or each example, raises 6 to 8 other additional questions as well that we would have to be challenged with.
Thank you. We have another question from Christine Cooper. Certainly online learning has to consist of more real instruction by teachers in the future rather than only assigning work for students. This is more like a statement, not necessarily a question, so we'll go on to the next one. Jim Hilliard asks, my high schooler had a pretty good online experience once it got going, except for his phys ed, all other subjects were taught pretty effectively. Another statement. Next question is Rebecca Schultz. I know everything is in flux, but what are your thoughts about how to support CHS seniors in the college application counseling process if we're looking at remote learning?
Yeah, and I think that gives us time to reflect on what worked, what didn't work, what were the recommendations that come from families through that process. So in that committee, that will be part of a discussion, and people will bring that up. Can we provide, what are we providing, and could we provide more for our seniors? Because we know how tough it was for this class of 2020. And I know that there were families who were not happy with the manner in which we launched. And I tried to share with families that this is the biggest shift in education in 150 years. There's never been such a shift in education where we're asked to pivot so quickly and given no dollars to do that. What I am hoping is throughout the remainder of this month, going into July and early August, as we are soliciting input from the larger community, as these committees are meeting periodically and vetting through some of those challenges and attempting to answer and put into place, that we're going to have a significantly better product and better outcomes now than we had before.
Okay. Jason Halpern asks, can we share the survey results? Once they're tabulated, I would ask you just, can we share the survey results? But I would say once they're tabulated on the website, possibly.
Oh, sure. Yes.
Okay. SM says, did you say you don't think we will go back to yellow or red once we hit green?
I say that because that's my personal opinion, but I am not the decision maker. I just see this country, this hyper acceleration for everyone wanting to come out and enjoy themselves. And obviously I understand the nature and the climate that this country is in right now, with unrest and people coming together to have their voices heard. Yes, that's important, but it also raises COVID challenges as well. I see across the country, people on beaches, people in restaurants, not practicing social distancing. So I just see this idea that I'm not sure we'll be able to turn this wave back because there's such a hyper acceleration for going back to normal. And personally for me, I feel that people may not look back. If I'm wrong, love it. We ensure the safety of others. I'd rather play it safe and people know that based on the decision I made in March 9th, where I was like, you know what? I don't feel safe. I don't think our kids feel safe. I don't think our staff is safe. We're going to play it safe and decide we're going to close. And then 3 days later, the governor followed suit with the rest of the districts in the state. So if we go back, then we go back. I just see that with what I'm seeing on TV and the way people are coming out, socializing, hanging out, and not practicing social distancing, the increase number over 2 million of cases, and maybe, you know, a vaccine will come a lot quicker than we expect. And if it does, that's great for us.
Thank you, sir. I'll just say PhD are the last initials on this particular message. These options are so tough for childcare and parents with kids in different grades. Will kids and families attempt to be grouped in the same days, weeks, or same buildings? And you answered something to that similar earlier.
Yeah, I did say that we were going to try to figure out a plan that does the least amount of harm. I've said this before, no matter what we put into place, it's going to have a significant negative impact on a large number of our families, and we have to figure out ways to mitigate that and lessen that burden. But I can tell you that there are ways in which we can eliminate it. We can try to soften it, but we can't eliminate it.
Thank you, sir. Jim Hilliard has an EP student, says an EP student, however, had a different experience. He was done with his work in 90 minutes every day and had no specials. It was underwhelming, even though it was clear that his classroom teachers were giving it their best. So he just wanted to make a statement there. Next one is from Amy Whipnitsky from Glenside. How would teacher absences be handled in order to encourage staff to stay home? Sorry, sir, my screen keeps moving here. Looks like that question got dismissed. Okay, sorry about that.
It's okay.
All right, then let's go to the next one. Mike Villar from Cheltenham Elementary. Some parents are concerned about return to in-person school, all the while other parents would be happy with traditional format. But the possibility of having a full online experience for some students and full in-person for others be considered in order to accommodate different needs and naturally achieve social distancing.
Yes, that is an option that we will explore.
Okay. Next question is from Hannah Bennett. If we are in green, is there any chance for a return to full-time in-school attendance?
If we are in green, the challenge with full-time attendance is what I shared earlier before with the required guidelines, is that we would need a significant amount of buses, bus drivers, and teachers, and extra rooms in order to accommodate every single student inside the facility all at the same time. Okay. That is financially, that's an impossibility.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Next question is, I appreciate the communication. It's again, last initials PhD. I appreciate the communication and effort. I realize how hard this is logistically. This is just a statement. The next one is from Jarvis, P. Jarvis. Would the school day be the same as a regular scheduled day, or would it be modified?
A good question. We're going to look at both, but the reality is that PDE is not going to, as of right now, the Department of Education is not waiving the 180-day rule and or the 990 minutes of instruction. If you recall, when Pennsylvania shut schools, there were a significant amount of waivers that were given to school districts. Like case in point, the PSSAs and Keystones were waived. The 180 days, were waived. The total number of instructional minutes were waived. This does not seem to, we've yet to hear from, and that could change, any waivers that will continue into the calendar, into this next calendar school year. It would appear as of today that those mandatory instructional minutes are going to have to be implemented, and the mandatory 180 days have to be implemented.
Thank you, sir.
As of today.
Looks like, okay, I read that one. Carla A, and before I read this question, sir, we are at 8:19. We received over 100 questions and or statements. So I'll continue to read until 8:30, and you can tell me how you'd like me to proceed.
Yeah, we'll do that. And I said earlier that I will vet through these questions. We will categorize them in terms of category, so that we're not, there's a possibility we don't have to answer all 900 or 100 plus questions if we group them into particular categories, and then we'll provide responses. And then to the other community member, we'll also, as quickly as we can, put that up, but also with the little poll that we took just to see how people were feeling on this call with options.
Okay. All right. So Carla A's question was, how will new student registration be handled?
Student registration starting relatively soon, and Dr. Horsey's office is handling that, and we will go through a virtual experience.
Thank you, sir. Leslie Jimenez says, I answered the poll stating my preference would be the kids go back face-to-face just because staying at home it's hard, but I would like to put that my second option would be half and half if times are not safe to do face-to-face. It is sad for our kids to be so sorry and I know that they're home. Chris from Wincote, his question is, if we had to do 100% virtual, would the teachers be holding class virtually with the students?
If we had to go 100% virtual, then it obviously would be a synchronous experience. Students would log into that. Teachers will be teaching live. There a possibility of recording those particular sessions. That could be an option for us, and that students are able to, parents and families are able to replay that in the event that they needed additional remediation and or if they missed that lesson.
Okay, thank you, sir. Elizabeth Bailara says she's from Cheltenham Elementary. I have multiple children in multiple buildings across the district. If we went to a schedule where we were not there daily, whether it be 1 day, 2 days, or weekly rotation, will CSD accommodate families with multiple children by having them scheduled on the same day schedule so that childcare was easier to secure? And you mentioned, someone asked that a little bit earlier.
And we would put that on the discussion table. Yeah. So these are, and I think this is the power of these opportunities that we have tonight, even though it's a short opportunity, and the ongoing conversations that are going to be led through our communities. Because as much as we think we may think through enough scenarios, the more people that are able to give us perspective, it gives us a greater opportunity to provide a greater level of service and meet a larger group of families' needs, even though I know that not everyone's going to be satisfied, but I think if we get enough input from individuals, we can put together a solid program in light of COVID-19. So thank you for that question, and they'll definitely be reflected on.
Thank you, sir. Moment Islam asks, when will the committee selection process begin and how will they be selected?
It will start very soon, next week, especially the conversation around sporting. So what we normally do is that when we have committees and trying to get commitment from individuals, that we go out to our parent organizations to seek individuals who'd be interested. We want to make sure that we have students on that committee who'll be willing to give the time. There's also outside partners and health providers that we are bringing in, depending on the committee, in order to do that. What I can tell you is that what we want is a manageable committee, because what you don't want is 60 to 80 people in a committee to navigate through some very specific challenges. So we are going to get a very diverse cross-representation talk to our parent organizations. We're going to talk with CEA leadership with regards to their recommendations. We're going to talk to our staff, those who are interested and want to sit on those committees, because we are going to need multiple perspectives to move forward. So matter of fact, tomorrow I have a meeting with Dr. Smith and Mr. Blackwell, our athletic director, Mr. Teasdale, and I think a couple other individuals, Dr. Horsey as well, to talk about this yellow phase and the fact that individuals want to start sports and the plan that we have to put into place. So that's going to start very, very quickly.
Thank you, sir. Elizabeth Lennox asked from Wyncote Elementary School, she has children there. Have you considered a fifth option of bringing back the most at-risk groups face-to-face while other? That's all that's there.
I think one of the challenges we would have with that is the idea about would that create LRE issues in terms of leaf-restricted environment if we, inequity issues, if we just did that. But thank you for the question.
Next question from Jim Hilliard from Melrose Park. How will it work for students slated to go to Eastern Tech this fall? Excellent
question. Who is the gentleman who answered that?
Jim Hilliard.
Jim, thank you for that question. As the superintendent of record starting in July for Eastern, what we, and I say we, the sending districts at superintendents, the 6 schools, we formed a separate group from the 22 other superintendents who meet twice a week to have these conversations. And we put in a third meeting because what we felt was that there had to be specific questions and inquiry that some of us are more intimately involved with, because we are those superintendents who sit with Eastern and send our kids there. So how we roll out a plan has to play, Eastern has to be a big part of what does that mean for our Eastern students. Very similar to the nature of the program requires more than any other, besides PBL, I guess, this really in-person, interactive, hands-on approach. And though I'm a big fan of Eastern, and there was an opportunity where there was virtual welding, and before the students actually went and did welding, there's a software application where it simulates that. There's so far you can go with that simulation, and you're going to need that tactical experience. So there is going to have to be a big factor in thinking about whichever scenario we put into place. What is the impact to really over 100 of our students who attend Eastern?
Okay, thank you, sir. Mia Blitzstein asks, I'm in favor of K-6 in person, 7 to 12 full virtual, but do we have the staffing for spreading K-6 out, K-6 out?
That's a good question, Ms. Blitzstein. It's very difficult, and if you look at the raw numbers, we are very short. So if we and when we unpack that scenario, the reality is, depending on the way in which we can create the spacing inside the classroom, we can significantly reduce those particular numbers. But anytime you split a class into 2, if that is the case, you're talking about an additional teacher, an additional classroom. So let me quickly give you an example, because I have this in front of me, because Dr. Smith has her eyes on this all the time with regards to current enrollment and where we are in classroom settings. So if you take a look at where we are with first grade, for example, and you have an average of 23 students inside that classroom, you have 4 teachers you have 4 sections. Depending on the amount of students we can put inside that classroom to support social distancing, let's say that first class of 23, you only could put 17 students inside that classroom comfortably to make sure it's social distancing, I'd say you can squeeze in 18. Well, the remaining 5, where are you going to find space for that? And if you multiply that by the total number of teachers, that easily is another section or 2 other sections, and 2 other spaces and 2 other teachers. So that is going to be an extreme challenge. We have to think differently about could we get relaxation in terms of certification requirements? Could our teachers fill in and provide instruction in other areas that they normally don't? But that's something that the state hasn't pushed forward with. So when we explore that, we might find out that that's a really easy that we can't do because we just don't have the bodies and we don't have the space.
Thank you,
So
sir.
this is the last question, and then
Yes, I was going to say it is now 8:30. Okay, last question is for Mrs. Michael Morris. If students in K to 6 attend the 7 schools, will they attend half-time or full day?
Most likely, there could be multiple scenarios, but because they could do both, but the scenario where one of the scenarios, K through 6, would allow them to be in school full day.
Okay.
So with that, I really want to appreciate the individuals who came out tonight. I was really happy to see the large number and the questions are being asked. I want to share in my closing remarks that it does take a village, and I am eager to start these committees and bring in really strong thinkers, people who are thinking outside the box, identical to some of the questions that people threw out there that honestly, I was like, oh, I didn't think about that. And that's why you need a large number of people in the room together to talk about this, or a manageable number of people in the room to talk about this, and a large number of people who are given access to continually give feedback about where we are. So I appreciate your time. This is one of many. I said to my team earlier in Dr. Smith's meeting that all of us are running on fumes, but we are trying very hard to make sure that we come out with a plan that supports all of our students and families as best as we can. In order to do that, we're going to need some of you on those committees to help navigate that, and I'm sure there are board members who will be bouncing in and out of those committees as well, so they can hear themselves about what is happening. And I know all of them were on this call this evening. So we are going to end this session. I want to thank you for joining me. We are going to, Ms. Manson and I, and probably members of my team are going to go through, try to categorize the questions and try to answer those and get them back to the public as quickly as possible. And we will be communicating next week with a schedule of our first series of meetings, but also trying to garner input on members of the community who'd be interested in giving us their long-term commitment to this challenge. I said before, if your schedule is really busy, I would prefer that you don't volunteer, and then we pick you, and then after the second meeting, you disappear from us and we no longer have that input, and then we have to try to bring someone new who may not have background on all of the work and all the research and all the resources that we read. So please think through that, and we'll follow up next week moving forward. So good night for everyone. I would thank my team for putting this together for me, and especially Mr. Kaufman in the background, and our IT director, Mr. Barone, and Mrs. Mance. The next session, you'll have the pleasure of having a large number of our administrators on those committees, so they can probably do a better job of answering your questions with more specificity. So good night, everyone, and thank you.